Welcome to my latest NFL mock draft of the 2023 NFL mock draft season. Now, this is the first mock draft that I'm doing since the Carolina Panthers traded up from pick 9 to pick number 1. So they are on the clock. And it's really hard to decide which quarterback they're going to go with at this point. But they are down to CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson, supposedly. But I think they're going to go with CJ Stroud. Now, there's been conflicting reports lately. Yesterday, there was a report that came out that said that Frank Reich is interested in Anthony Richardson, but the front office is interested in Stroud. So they're at a bit of a crossroads right now, but I do think that they will settle in for CJ Stroud. Pick number 2, the Texans. There's been reports they could pass on a quarterback, but I do think they will go with Bryce Young. Although if they do pass on a quarterback this season, they will join in on the tank for Caleb Williams train that I think will be decided about 3 or 4 teams, the Texans being one of them. So I do think they go with Bryce Young this year. Pick number 3, the Cardinals are on the clock, and I think they go with Will Anderson Jr. Jalen Carter's draft stock has been falling throughout this mock draft process. I had him as a number 1 overall pick in my original mock draft, but now he's slipping based off of the offseason news that has been involved surrounding him. But the Cardinals get Will Anderson Jr. And this is going to be a pretty good pick for the Cardinals. If Will Anderson was eligible for the 2022 draft, he would have in all likelihood been the first overall pick. Now, pick number 4, I have the Indianapolis Colts going with Anthony Richardson. I do think that the first 4 picks in the draft are going to be some variation of Stroud, Young, Anderson Jr., and Richardson. I'm just not 100% sure on the order. So I would argue that the real NFL draft begins at pick number 5 with the Seahawks. And I think the Seahawks, I think they're going to go with Tyree Wilson at Texas Tech, a boost in their defense. Although I could see them maybe going with Devin Witherspoon to complement Tariq Woolley, but I do feel like they have some other needs to address. And I am all for taking the best player available. So they could go Jalen Carter, but I do think there's going to be a couple teams towards the top that are going to want to pass on him because there's just some uncertainties. Pick number 6, and I had the Detroit Lions going with Jalen Carter. I think that Jalen Carter is the kind of guy that Dan Campbell really wants. And he wants fiery, passionate players. Jalen Carter has championship pedigree, a multinational champion at Georgia. Pick number 7. Now, the Raiders, this is going to be very interesting. Do the Raiders go with Will Levis? Or do they pass on Will Levis when they sign Jimmy Garoppolo to a multi-year contract? I just feel like in my mind, if you're going to sign Jimmy Garoppolo for that long, for that amount of money, I feel like you're passing on a quarterback. So I think the Raiders, I think they address a bigger need. I think they go with Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. And Christian Gonzalez got a lot of buzz in the last month and a half. And it's a really debate between him and Devin Witherspoon, who should be the first corner taken, but I think Gonzalez gets the slight edge for me in this one. Up next, we have the Atlanta Falcons. And I think the Falcons, they have worked on their defense. They've worked on their offense the last couple drafts. Now they got to work on their defense. And I think they go with Nolan Smith out of Georgia. And there's been rumors that he may not fall outside the top 10. And I think the Falcons at 8, I think that's an ideal slot for Nolan Smith. Keep the Georgia kid in Georgia. I think that'd be a great fit for him. Pick number 9, the Bears. They go with Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern, the first offensive tackle on the board. They have the best player available as far as what their needs are. As this is helpful in the pass protection game for Justin Fields. As Justin Fields, he needs some time to extend some plays. And Peter Skoronski. I watched a couple Northwestern games this past season, and Skoronski, he was just bullying defenders. As he is the one bright spot for Northwestern, him and Evan Hull that will be taken later on in the draft. Could be a late day 2 guy, early day 3 guy. Pick number 10. The Eagles, they have a very interesting choice here. They did sign Rashad Penny earlier in this offseason. Miles Sanders is with the Panthers. So do they go with Bijan Robinson or do they address bigger needs? I think you got to go with bigger needs here. And I think the Eagles, they go with Myles Murphy out of Clemson. Pick number 11. Now, there's been rumors, potential rumors, but I think this could be a smokescreen. The Titans are interested in trading up from pick 11 to pick 3. Ryan Tannehill is getting up there in age. Malik Willis, he looked pretty disappointing in his appearances last season. I'd say that part of that is because he didn't have anybody to throw to. Treylon Burks was hurt most of the year. But I do think they go with Will Levis. I just think that they're intrigued by Will Levis's arm strength. But if they don't go with Will Levis, I do think they could go with possibly Hendon Hooker in a later round. Pick number 12, the Houston Texans. The Texans, they have their quarterback in Bryce Young. But I think it's time that they go after a target for him. They traded Brandon Cooks away. I think they go with Quentin Johnston out of TCU. Keeping the Texas kid in Texas. I do think that could be a really solid fit for him. Even though I do think Jackson Smith-Njigba should be the first receiver off the board, I don't necessarily think he will be the first one off the board on draft night. Pick number 13, we have the Jets on the clock, and I think they go with an offensive tackle here. I think they go with Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. Darnell Wright has been shooting up the top towards draft boards. There's been some in the early portion of the offseason where he's late first round. I think he could go as high as maybe around this range right here to the Jets at 13. As I think the Jets, it's in their best interest to try to boost up that offensive line. But this may not even be the Jets pick. It could end up being the Packers pick, as we still don't know what the Packers-Jets deal for Aaron Rodgers is when it's gonna unfold. So for now, I just have it being Darnell Wright, a tackle out of Tennessee. Or should I say the tackle out of Tennessee? But anyways, pick number 14, the Patriots are on the clock. And there's been some rumors that maybe the Patriots looking to trade Mac Jones. I really don't know why. I just feel like that Mac Jones could be more of a project quarterback at this point. I'd say give Mac Jones one more season. If he's unsuccessful, then draft one of the quarterbacks next year. But I'm going to go with Devin Witherspoon. The Patriots, they never really replaced Jackson, their top corner from a couple of years ago. But they finally replaced him, get a top corner in Devin Witherspoon. Pick number 15, the Packers on the clock. The question is, who's going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers or is it going to be Jordan Love? It doesn't matter who it's going to be. I think the Packers, I think they're going to draft a wide receiver, and I think they should draft a wide receiver. And they will take Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State, who I feel like should be the first receiver off the board, but again, on draft night, I don't think he's going to, even though he should. Next up, we have the Commanders on the clock. And I think the Commanders, I think they're going to let Sam Howell be the quarterback in 2023, see how he does. I think they're going to make a pretty surprise pick here. I think they're going to go with and they're going to go with Luke Wypler of Ohio State. Now, once we get towards this range in the draft, there's multiple random guys that fall to these to kind of teams in the middle of the first round towards the end you never even hear of until draft night. And I think Luke Wypler is going to be one of those guys that we randomly see pop up in the first round once draft night takes place. Pick number 17, the Steelers. The Steelers, they need help on the offensive line, and I think they go with Broderick Jones out of Georgia. The Lions with their second pick in the first round. I think the Lions, I think they go corner. I think these two first round picks of the Lions, I think their sole purpose and their MO should be to improve the defense. And I think they go with I think they go with Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. I'm kind of back and forth on whether it's going to be Joey Porter Jr. and Deonte Banks in this spot, but I would lean towards Joey Porter as Joey Porter Jr. He's gotten buzzed throughout the mock draft process, mostly towards the beginning. Those midseason mock drafts had him as high as the top 10. But I think this could be an ideal slot for Joey Porter. Although if the Steelers, they pass on an offensive tackle, which I don't think they should, then I could see Joey Porter going at 17 to the Steelers. The Buccaneers are on the clock. And I think they're going to go with I think they're going to make a surprise pick. I'm going to go with Paris Johnson Jr. of Ohio State. We saw the Buccaneers struggle all throughout the year this past season. Part of that, Tom Brady didn't have much time to throw. The offensive line was depleted with injuries throughout the year. I think they just looked to find a boost and perhaps some depth with their offensive line. Next, we've got the Seahawks on the clock. And I think they go with if I'm going to go with Anton Harrison at Oklahoma, improve the offensive line a little bit. You've got a star in Kenneth Walker III. Take a tackle, boost up the offensive line, build running lanes for him. So now the Chargers are on the clock as the Dolphins, they forfeit their first round pick due to getting caught in 4K. I think the Chargers go receiver. Keenan Allen is getting up there in age. So they got to find a number one of the future. And I think they go Jordan Addison out of USC. And I think the Ravens, I think they follow suit. And I think they also go receiver. I think they go with Zay Flowers out of Boston College. So the receivers, they're starting to come off the board. Once we see a receiver come off the board, a lot of teams, they go with receivers in following picks. So pick number 23, the Minnesota Vikings. I think they go with Elijah Cansey out of Pittsburgh. Although I would not be entirely surprised if we saw the Vikings, if they had tried trading up to maybe get one of the top receivers, and then Jigba or Addison, or even Quentin Johnston, as they do need to find a replacement for Adam Thielen, although I do feel like they can accomplish that in a later round. I think they go with Elijah Cansey, and Elijah Cansey, he's someone I had mixed feelings about. He was one of the guys that stuck out to me from the NFL Combine. but then people aren't really talking about it as much. If you would have asked me to do a mock draft a couple weeks ago, I probably the minute after the combine ended, I'd say Kalijah Cansey could be in the range of pick 11 to 16. But I've seen mock drafts where he's outside of the first round, late first round. But I think the Vikings at pick 23, I would not be surprised if that was the actual pick they made on draft night. Pick number 24, the Jaguars are on the clock. And I think they go with Deonte Banks out of Maryland. They never really replaced CJ Henderson. Well, not CJ Henderson. They didn't really replace Jalen Ramsey. They tried with CJ Henderson, and they traded him away. So I think go with Deonte Banks to try to get a new number one corner, as they haven't seemed to have any success in replacing Jalen Ramsey. New York Giants are now on the clock. And I think that they go with, I think they go receiver. I think they're going to go with Josh Downs out of North Carolina. Josh Downs is an underrated prospect in this draft class. A guy that isn't talked about as much compared to the likes of Njigba, Johnston, Addison, even Zay Flowers. But I think in the right situation, Josh Downs has the highest upside of everybody else. Next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Dallas Cowboys, I think they go with Bijan Robinson. I think this is going to be the surprise of draft night. I think they do this for multiple reasons. One, they got to replace Zeke. I get that they have Tony Pollard, but I don't know if the Cowboys are even wanting to have Tony Pollard be the RB1. Bijan Robinson is getting a lot of hype about a generational prospect. And three, they're going to spite the Eagles because they know the Eagles are looking at Bijan Robinson. So I think they take Bijan Robinson, they spite the Eagles. And up next, pick number 27, the Bills. And I think that they go with Emmanuel Forbes and Mississippi State. This might be one of the picks that I think is probably going to be, in all likelihood, wrong. But early on in the mock draft process, a lot of talks about Emmanuel Forbes maybe being a late first-round pick. And I think with a corner-needing team like the Bills, I think they could take their shot on Emmanuel Forbes. With Jordan Poyer staying in Buffalo, I had Brian Branch being slated to the Bills in the last couple mock drafts. But with Poyer staying in Buffalo, I think they go corner. Up next, we got the Bengals. And the Bengals, they have Irv Smith as their new tight end. So I think they pass on a tight end here. I think they go with Mazi Smith out of Michigan. Mazi Smith, he got undershadowed. Well, he wasn't talked about last year for Michigan's defense. And last year, I mean by 2021, where he wasn't talked about because he was sharing the spotlight with Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. But Mazi Smith, he is an absolute freak of nature. And this would be an A-plus pick for the Bengals. They can get a guy like Mazi Smith. Up next, we have the Saints at pick number 29. I think they go with Brian Bursey out of Clemson. Brian Bursey, I thought was going to be a guy that was going to benefit from the combine. I think he did a little bit. But depending on how things shape out on draft night, I could see Brian Bursey going as high as maybe pick number 15, outside the top 15 maybe, just a few picks afterwards, or right around here. I don't think there's any way that Brian Bursey is going to be outside of the first couple picks in round 2. If he is, I'm going to be very surprised. Up next are the Eagles at pick number 30. And I think they work on their defense. They took Miles Murphy with the 10th pick. And I think they go with Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. Excuse me, not Lucas Van Ness. Brian Branch out of Alabama. The Eagles' defense is going to look fairly different. They get a replacement for CJ Gardner Johnson. I think with the 2 first-round picks the Eagles had in this mock draft, I think those are very good picks for the Eagles in Miles Murphy and Brian Branch. And finally, the champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that they go with where's he at? I think they go with DeJuan Jones of Ohio State. Now, something that sticks out about this mock draft is I have no linebackers or tight ends taken the first round. And I think that's for a reason. If there was a linebacker that I think that could get taken in the first round, I could see it being Diane Henley, Jack Campbell, or even Drew Sanders. I could see either of those 3 being taken the first round, but maybe towards the end. But the linebackers have not been talked about that much compared to other positions. And there's a reason why I don't have any tight ends on the board is I don't think that there's going to be a team that finds it worth it to take a tight end in the first round. As when you look at the best tight ends in the league, and Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, they weren't taken the first round. They weren't even taken in the second round. They were taken in the 3rd round, 5th round. So I think that's going to be a big reason to why a tight end would not be taken the first round. And that will do it for my latest mock draft. Thank you for tuning in. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, have a wonderful day.